I do want to say a very special thank you to NGC for their partnership, to Republic Bank and IDB for their platinum partnership again for the second edition in a row, several years later, but second time we're doing this event. And well, specifically, I really want to thank Minister Manning and Dr. Joseph Khan for coming out and giving very important remarks to help open this event. And actually, Minister Manning did I'm very grateful for the start that he gave, because he's actually made it a lot easier for us in showing the government's already prior, savviness and readiness to look at this topic of green bonds and understanding of green bonds. Yeah, I just want to say I am trying to cover a lot, so I'm going to try and go very quickly. But my goal here, as you saw with the topic, which was the case, I'll just go back a second to see what that was, but the green infrastructure and the case for green bonds as a tool for investment and scaling is really to make that case. So the other speakers that will come after me, they'll go into more depth on green bonds. I'm going to do a very quick run through of that, but I really want to make this connection for people to see how those two things can work together. Okay. So given that we're at this conference, I think it's important to at least start with a little bit of an introduction and a definition to that. So importantly, I think it's worth starting with what is infrastructure. So I have a broad definition right there on the screen. So it's the set of facilities, infrastructure is a set of facilities and systems that serve a country, city, or other area, and encompasses the services and facilities necessary for its economy, households, and firms to function. So I'm just running through very quickly. You all know these, but just so everyone is kind of clear on what infrastructure is. We have transportation, roads, highways, bridges, and so on, energy, power stations, wind farms, hydroelectric plants, water, reservoirs, dams, pumping stations, waste management, collection, disposal sites, landfills, recreational facilities, parks, conservation areas, etc. These are all forms of infrastructure. So green infrastructure, in one of its definitions, refers to green spaces and the integration of green spaces, features, and elements within populated areas, such as towns and cities. That's one definition. But as you know, with some of these newish terms, there are broader definitions, and this is the bigger definition which we look at. So the broader definition is really the greening of infrastructure, which can entail infrastructure becoming more green, green forms of infrastructure, and even previously less recognized key green features, which are now being recognized as serving very critical and important forms of infrastructure. Example, forests. I'm going to come back to forests in a second, but I want to put that there on everyone's radar to appreciate that as something you'll see a little bit more on in a second. Now we're going to take a quick look at the benefits of green infrastructure, and this is taken from the EPA's website, Environmental Protection Agency of the US. I'm going quickly, but just try to take a quick look at the top left and the actual specific benefits. There's a reason you're going to see that come back in the presentation later. So improves water quality, reduces localized flooding, captures water and reuse, improves air quality, improves climate resiliency. These are some of the benefits of green infrastructure. Additionally, if we look at the economic benefits, we'll see things like, reduced cost in wastewater treatment, reduced flood damage costs, and I want to point these out as very important things that we know face our country. Improve neighborhood value, more green jobs, and so on. And then, of course, on the social side, improved health and well-being, greater sense of community, and all that. But I wanted to show this because you're going to see it come back on the screen something in a little while that will make a relation. What is a bond? Most people know, but I thought it's important in case some people don't to make that quick little understanding. So people are aware that a bond is a debt mechanism, and then therefore they'll say, well, why not a loan? A lot of people say, what is the difference between bonds and loans? So a loan is a debt lending mechanism with a specified interest rate. And a bond is a debt lending mechanism with a specified coupon rate, also an interest rate. So what is the difference? There are other differences which you might see a bit more in the further presentations, but a big difference is that with loans, the lender prepares the package and makes an offer to borrowers. With a loan, often a single lender is associated with a specific loan transaction. With a bond, it's a bit of a big change where the issuer, the person seeking to get the funds, develops the mechanism. So the issuer prepares the package for lenders. And then you often get multiple buyers who are the ones purchasing the coupons, who are the lenders associated with a single bond. So I just wanted to make that quick understanding in case people, just to get that clear, because bonds is not something that's being used, certainly not in the green space in the Caribbean, but if we're going to talk about that, I think it's important for us to have that understanding. So now, what are green bonds? They're types of debt issued by public or private institutions to finance themselves, as we just saw with what a bond is. And what makes it green is that it's used to finance projects and activities which are related to and in support of climate and environmental action. So this is really what defines a green bond, and you'll see a bit more of that from colleagues in later presentations. The International Capital Market Association, ICMA, their definition, you can see there, I won't read it out, but it really speaks to that exclusivity of the projects which the bond is generated to support, and the projects being green projects, as is the case with a green bond. Iberdrola is one of the biggest issuers of bonds, green bonds in the world, and just showing quickly some of the key projects that they focus on as seeing as major green bond projects. So we can see renewable energy, energy efficiency, clean transportation, responsible waste management. All very important things which Trinidad and Caribbean countries need to be looking at as we move into this, let's call it, green transition. But I also thought it's important to mention a few more which you'll find from other, key sources. World Bank, Nature Conservancy, the Nature Conservancy, specifically watershed management, food security, conservation projects, climate adaptation, nature-based solutions, and even ecotourism and marine protected areas. All the marine protected areas are now start to fall into this blue bond category. So I hope you all are starting to kind of see how you can really have different themes, and this is where you actually start to hear different themes of purple bonds and other bonds for specific things. The whole concept was that simply we can develop mechanisms to do a particular thing that can be good for society, So that's where the first green bond came from. Now, I had asked you all earlier to take a look at those very specific benefits associated with green infrastructure, which came from the EPA's website. These here are now listed benefits of the typical green bond projects. Reducing overall wastage and environmental pollution, increasing groundwater capture and recharge, improves water security, increasing water reserves, improving clean water availability and access, supporting water treatment and reuse, increasing climate resilience, reduce flooding and storm damage, supporting healthier and more environmentally sustainable agriculture, improving and protecting biodiversity, reducing carbon emissions, creating healthier and lower impacting building environments such as green buildings, and importantly, overall financial savings by bond issuers, which you'll see a bit more just now how that works, and as well as reduce direct costs through replace grey infrastructure with green or green-grey hybrids. Now, the real reason I want to do this was that if you remember the first sort of benefits presented around green infrastructure, you will find that they are actually very much aligned and almost the same as the benefits that you see presented for green bonds. So it's really just showing that these two are very closely married, and green bonds are often used to support green infrastructure projects, Even if it's not called green infrastructure, that's a particular term, but when you put those two terms together, the definitions are very closely, aligned, at least in terms of the benefits. Now back to forests. We spoke about forests before. So here, we can see a forest. Now, if you can just imagine that you saw bare desiccated land, and imagine rain falling on that and what would happen. Think of our hillsides in the northwest peninsula of Trinidad, after a dry season when it's all burnt. What happens to the water? It very quickly runs down those hillsides, gets into the rivers and valleys very quickly, fills up those big concrete drains which we constructed, and that was good at some point, but now they might be able to hold as much water as coming, and flooding happens, right? So if you have that picture in your heads of that desiccated environment, now picture what a forest does, right? A forest captures the rainfall. It stays on the land for longer. It doesn't run off. It doesn't get into those rivers and streams so quickly. It fills back groundwater levels that feed wells, that when the dry season comes, that feed rivers, and ultimately Wassa and so on. So it's just to show that this beautiful thing that we all enjoy, for us who like economics, actually has very significant economic value. So, and that is really, I think, green infrastructure aims to do that, to bridge this understanding of a lot of green things, if you will, with their place in our business world, if you want to think of it that way. So, with the onset understanding of green infrastructure and the coining of the term, forests are something which have become recognized as an important form of green infrastructure. So I'm giving you an example here now from Sao Paulo. They were facing, with their 9 million or so people in Sao Paulo, the Cantareira reservoir system, they were facing a crisis in 2015, a water crisis, a lack of water, and decided to do a reforestation project. This was implemented to reduce runoff and sedimentation, filling reservoirs, taking space, ultimately to increase capacity. What they did was they planted 4,000 hectares, about 10,000 acres of forest. The initial investment was about 37 million US. The direct sedimentation management cost prevention was more than 106 million US to the city. Right? So I just want to give a moment to allow us to take that in, because we're moving into a space where we're able to begin, scientists, engineers are being able to begin to quantify the value on these green structures, if you will. But here, they have the very real output that the return on investment was almost 70 million US dollars while resolving their water challenge and reforesting 10,000 acres of land. So here we see how benefits can get bundled with this type of work, A similar project was done with FUNAG for Quito's 3 million inhabitants. There's a lot of numbers available on that as well. I'm not going to get into them, but I thought that this particular one with Sao Paulo, showing that our ROI is very important to keep in mind. I won't have time to go into this. I know time is tight, but I did want to just show that its companies can do this as well. So this, large corporations mostly, but this is a 1.25 billion US dollar bond that Pepsi did. And this was their second green bond, but just a couple summary points. These funds are used for their operations, so it is funding their operations, but through the use of recycled plastic from the US instead of virgin plastic alone, they were able to save 230,000 metric tons of greenhouse gas emissions. Cumulatively, with the benefits you see on the screen there, they have sequestered over 1 million metric tons of greenhouse gas emissions. In terms of water savings, they focus on regenerating watersheds in particularly water-stressed watersheds, and facilitated 7 billion liters of water going back into watersheds. Their water efficiency has improved by about 2 billion liters per year. And they've also worked about $26 million went directly to 5,300 farmers, covering more than 2 million acres of land being transitioned to more regenerative agriculture. So just to show a company made this decision, it's operational funds to help them run their business, but it is because they've incorporated the green, it's put it in that market, if you will, of green bonds. So now, and especially because I know that the organizers will be looking hard at me for time, I'm going to run through these very quickly. But I really wanted to give that little bringing home feel of what we have here in Trinidad and Tobago and opportunities in the Caribbean, Trinidad and Tobago and the Caribbean. So what about us here, Trinidad and Tobago and other Caribbean countries? So vetiver hedgerows and vetiver barriers on our hillsides, other vegetative barriers, not just vetiver, because it complements, there's other important ones complementing, can help to reduce flooding, promote groundwater recharge, build aquifers, underground water supplies, and increase water security. So you all know about this plant a lot already. I don't need to go into much extra detail, but having understood the forest analogy, if you picture these hedgerows on our desiccated hillsides, that slows down the runoff. So here you could see being slowed down, sediments going with it. This is what an effective barrier looks like, a green barrier. So that slows down water effectively to zero every time it hits a barrier, preventing the velocity which it reaches the valleys below, and promoting groundwater recharge, recharging the water sources for the wet season. But importantly, I know that we in Trinidad can sometimes be a bit active. I could say even short-term thinkers, and we need to be able to think more long-term, but the short-term benefits I think we should be importantly focusing on is the potential for flood mitigation. I think that's something that could resonate with all of us. Here's a picture just showing the hedgerow and the sediments captured behind to show that effectiveness. And And this is just a picture here that shows typically what it's like now. On the top left, these earthen drains where all the water runs to and then runs off very quickly, eroding and cutting the land a lot with it, versus these barriers which can do something different, which is capture and spread the water. This is actually up in, I like to say because it's true, but we hope one day he will walk with us on the slopes, but Mr. Imbe's watershed, in fact, in Paramin Perseverance, and where we know this is a true story, but has faced personal challenges, or you could call it, his office has faced challenges with the serious flooding taking place in the community below. And the barriers that we put on the slope, and you can see there's also other vegetation. That cross is the cross of branches is a living check dam. I don't know if this will play. I will try. It's a 3D rendition showing how quickly, so it wouldn't play there, but it basically shows the quantity of sediments captured behind. And here you can see several feet, someone is standing quite a bit up. If any of us have seen big erosion gullies in this island or other Caribbean islands that are stretching feet wide and tens of feet deep, that is soil being cut from the land, that is land loss, that is soil going now into our rivers. These methods have helped to repair those gullies and close them up and build back the land on this farmer's land. And within 1 to 2 years, we had the community down below asking us, is it really possible that this is working in terms of the flood mitigation that was taking place? So just to say, we have very real examples happening here already that can be built upon. More hedgerows in Paramin. Moving now to another example, reforestation programs to assist in reforesting degraded areas, restoring watersheds, increasing biodiversity, helping Trinidad and Tobago meet its land degradation neutrality targets, which are like Paris Agreement targets but focus on land degradation and restoring them. We have goals to restore several hundred hectares of land over the next few years as our government's commitments. So here we can see a picture. This is about 2 to 3 weeks of organic waste deposited by a regional corporation at national quarries. And here we can see, just after 4 months, that green patch, this is a drone shot, but that green patch is just 4 months later, and look at what the rest of the quarry looks like. So just by sending organic waste, instead of to the landfill, to take up space, to rot, to catch on fire and so on, to other sources, we can regenerate land. It's that easy, So I just really wanted to kind of show these things to show how accessible some of these solutions are, but it will take, some bigger decisions for us to do that. This is another picture of that kind of scene there, and this is a before and after showing above and below, what the quarry looked like after several years of us working on rehabilitation activities there. This is a recent 1,000 tree plot completed for Delta Logistics as a company that took an investment choice to buy one of Closed Loop Caribbean's packages. So this is 1,000 trees, which you all who are going to the quarry tomorrow will get to see this particular plot. Fruiting hardwoods, we aim to do trees that will both sequester a lot of carbon and give back to people as well as animals. And then lastly, climate smart agriculture to increase food quality and food security. I won't go into depths on this because you'll have a chance to see more on this from another presenter later. Microbes alive, you can just see I'm pointing out there with that arrow. But I just wanted to mention that there are actual solutions coming forward now and alternatives to industrial chemical agriculture, which we know is both killing land, changing how food tastes actually as well, but importantly affecting health. There's a lot of associated negative health benefits with it, and presenting big challenges when it comes to Forex, with not just Forex, but even foreign supplies. And as the prices go up of these things, farmers are struggling. So you'll see a bit more on that later, but it's just to say we actually have scalable solutions now for climate smart agriculture. You can picture in this scene here how fast water will run off, erosion will take place. Another very basic climate smart practice, the very same vetiver hedgerows on contours. Leaves can be chopped, dropped, and spread around plants. Instead, now you have water being kept in the soil, no erosion taking place, and several farmers, which is actually surprising to us, are actually reporting that this is keeping away pests, which may be to do with the vetiver's kind of scents and aromas and so on. But you have this myriad of benefits that can come out with simply trying to pivot and turn towards new approaches. And some of them can be low cost. So in closing and in summary, again, what about Trinidad and Tobago and the Caribbean? So a green bond can be developed to support multiple projects within a portfolio. The benefits of developing a green bond specifically to support a decided portfolio of projects, what are they? So in developing a bond, we kind of spoke at the beginning about how a bond is really the organization seeking to borrow or raise funds. They develop this package, so they will have pre-established and pre-assessed green activities and investments that they're going to put that money towards. Known measurable benefits, environmental, social, and economic, if we start to quantify, say, flood damage savings, things like that. And that's a very key thing I want to hammer home and really sort of encourage us looking more closely at, especially our government, because, bonds are often issued by governments and corporations, and so our government really has that unique opportunity where this has not been done in the Caribbean before, but to take that step. Second party opinions, and a colleague here is going to speak on that soon, and you get a good understanding, but very important, and that will help bolster confidence and knowledge that the projects will succeed. And lastly, monitoring, which will take place to actually ensure that correct implementation takes place and that the value desired is achieved. So with that, I will close in hoping that the case for green bonds in Trinidad and Tobago has been made, and thank you very much.